I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. But sometimes life takes you down paths so strange, so disturbing, that you begin to question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. For me, it all began not with whispers of betrayal, but with a quiet suspicion that something was happening behind the walls of my barn, something I couldn't explain, but that gnawed at me day and night. Horses have been my life since I was a boy. I grew up with calloused hands, waking up before dawn to feed them, to brush their coats until they shone in the morning sun, and to ride through endless fields that felt more like home than any four walls ever could. To me, horses weren't animals, they were family, partners in a life of sacrifice and work. Every dollar I ever earned, I poured back into my farm, into the stables, into keeping those horses strong and safe. When I met Lisa, I thought she understood that. She knew from the first day that my world revolved around those horses, and for a time, she even pretended to love it too. She would come down to the barn with me, stand beside me as I worked, smile while I talked about bloodlines and feed schedules. But marriage changes people, and over the years, I began to see something different in her eyes whenever she looked at the horses, something cold, something resentful. She never said it outright, but I could feel it. She hated that I devoted so much of myself to the farm. While other husbands took their wives on vacations, bought them new cars, or spent weekends in the city, I was always in the barn, always thinking about the next vet bill, the next competition, the next breeding cycle. To me, it wasn't neglect, it was survival, it was love, it was who I was. But to her, maybe it was prison. The first real sign came one morning when I walked into the stable and noticed that my strongest mare, Daisy, seemed off. She was sluggish, her coat dull, her eyes heavy as if she hadn't slept. I brushed it off at first, maybe the weather, maybe a bad bale of hay. But then another horse started showing the same signs, and another after that. It didn't add up. I started paying closer attention, writing down feeding times, keeping track of who looked after them when I wasn't around. That's when I noticed something odd. The horses always seemed worse on the days I worked late in town, the days when Lisa was home alone. At first, I tried to laugh it off. My mind was playing tricks, right? But the more I thought about it, the less I could shake the unease. She had been spending more and more time in the stables lately, always after I left for work. When I asked her what she was doing down there, she'd smile casually and say, "Oh, just checking on them. Making sure they're okay." But her answers always felt rehearsed. One night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the wind brushing against the windows, and my mind went somewhere dark. What was she doing in the barn? Why did she always seem so secretive about it? Why did the horses look worse every time she'd been alone with them? And then, a thought struck me, one I hated myself for even entertaining. Was Lisa cheating on me? The idea came like a knife, sharp and humiliating, and I pushed it away as soon as it appeared. But it came back, again and again, twisting in my gut. She'd been distant, colder than usual, and she certainly didn't hide her resentment of the horses. What if there was someone else? Some stranger she met, who came around when I wasn't home. The barn was isolated, after all. Secluded. A place where no one would question a little extra time spent behind closed doors. That night, I lay awake until morning, my mind drowning in images I didn't want to see. Lisa with another man. Lisa sneaking into the barn while I was gone. Lisa betraying me in the one place I thought was sacred. I tried to shake it off in the days that followed, but the paranoia only grew worse. Every time I saw her walk toward the barn, my chest tightened. Every time I found the horses weaker, I wondered if I was blind to something right in front of me. And every time she smiled at me with that casual, almost dismissive expression, I wondered if she was laughing inside, mocking me for not knowing. I told myself I had to find out the truth. Whatever was happening down there, I couldn't keep guessing. I couldn't keep wondering if the woman I'd shared my life with for years was hiding something unthinkable. And so I made up my mind. The next time she went into that barn alone, I would follow her. Quietly. Carefully. and I would finally uncover what my wife was doing with my horses. I'll never forget the first time I decided to follow her. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, as if my body already knew I was about to uncover something I didn't want to see. Lisa had been unusually quiet that day, barely speaking over breakfast, and when I asked her if she wanted to come into town with me, she said she had things to do at home. I didn't press her, but inside, alarm bells went off. I pretended to leave for work, driving my truck down the road until I was out of sight. Then I pulled over, cut the engine, and waited. 10 minutes passed, maybe 15, and then I saw her, walking across the yard, straight toward the barn. My barn. The horses stirred inside as if sensing her presence, and I clenched my fists so tight my knuckles turned white. I crept back quietly, circling around the far side of the barn so I could peer through one of the small windows near the hayloft. What I saw nearly made my knees give out. Lisa was standing close to Daisy, my mare, stroking her neck slowly, almost tenderly. But it wasn't the gesture that got me, it was the look on her face. It wasn't love, it wasn't care. It was something darker, colder, like she was touching something she despised but couldn't let go of. I watched as she leaned closer, whispering something I couldn't hear. Daisy shifted uneasily, ears pinned back, tail flicking nervously. My stomach twisted. What on earth was she saying to the horse? And why did it feel like I was intruding on something secret, something I wasn't supposed to see? She stayed there for a long time, stroking Daisy, moving from stall to stall, whispering, pausing, glancing over her shoulder as if to make sure no one was watching. When she finally left, I ducked low and held my breath until she was gone. Only then did I slip inside the barn, trying to shake the unease clawing at me. The air felt heavy, suffocating. I checked the stalls one by one. Nothing obvious was wrong, but the horses were restless, eyes darting, hooves shifting against the floor. They felt it too. Whatever Lisa was doing, it wasn't harmless. The days that followed turned my life into a living nightmare. Lisa became more secretive, slipping away whenever she thought I wasn't paying attention. Each time, I wanted to confront her, but fear held me back. What if I accused her and I was wrong? What if she really was just checking on them? But then again, what if I was right? And the worst thought of all, the one that haunted me in the dead of night, was this: what if she wasn't just whispering to them? What if she wasn't just feeding them? What if she was meeting someone down there? The barn was isolated. It had a lock, but Lisa knew the combination. She could have anyone come by when I wasn't around, and no one would ever know. My imagination spiraled out of control, painting pictures I couldn't erase. A man slipping into the shadows of the barn. Lisa waiting for him, glancing over her shoulder with that same cold, secretive look. The horses restless because they were sensing not food or whispers, but betrayal. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I told Lisa I had to work late in town, and she'd barely looked up from her book when I said it. No questions, no concern, just a dismissive nod. That alone made my stomach churn. I parked my truck far from the house and walked back through the fields under the cover of darkness. The barn loomed in the distance, a silhouette against the dim glow of the moon. As I got closer, I heard it, the sound of movement inside. My pulse raced. I crept up to the window again, peering inside. The lantern was lit, casting long shadows across the stalls. Lisa was there, standing by Daisy once again, but this time she wasn't alone. She was bent over, her body turned just enough that I couldn't see what she was doing. My chest tightened, breath catching in my throat. From where I stood, it looked like she was leaning close, far too close, whispering, touching, moving in a way that made my blood run cold. I stumbled back from the window, my mind screaming at me. I didn't want to believe it, but what else could it be? Why else would she sneak out here in the middle of the night, when she thought I was gone? Why else would she act so secretive, so distant? I leaned against the side of the barn, trying to steady myself, my heart slamming against my ribs. I wanted to burst in, to demand answers, to drag the truth out into the open. But fear rooted me to the ground. Fear of what I might hear. Fear that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was already shattered. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, Lisa blew out the lantern and slipped out of the barn, her face pale in the moonlight. She walked back to the house, calm, unhurried, as if nothing had happened at all. I stayed there long after she was gone, staring at the closed doors of the barn, my mind a storm of rage and confusion. Had I really just seen what I thought I saw? Or was my imagination twisting the shadows into something they weren't? The horses stirred again, and Daisy let out a soft, low whinny that sent chills down my spine. I pushed the door open, stepping inside, searching the stalls. Nothing seemed different, nothing seemed wrong, but the air was heavy with something I couldn't name. I left the barn that night more broken than I'd ever felt. I couldn't confront her yet. Not without proof. Not without certainty. But I knew one thing for sure: Lisa was hiding something, something dangerous, something that was tearing at the very core of my life. And I swore to myself that the next time, I wouldn't just watch from the shadows. I would catch her in the act. I would finally see the truth with my own eyes. The next day, I couldn't look at Lisa without feeling the weight of suspicion crushing me. She moved around the kitchen like nothing was wrong, humming softly as she cooked breakfast, sliding a plate of eggs in front of me as if we were the perfect couple. But I couldn't eat. My throat felt tight, my chest heavy. Every smile she gave me seemed fake, every glance a mask hiding something I wasn't supposed to know. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but I bit my tongue. Instead, I nodded, thanked her, and pretended to eat while inside my head, a storm was raging. All day long, I replayed what I had seen in the barn. Lisa leaning close, her body moving in ways I couldn't explain. The shadows had twisted my mind, but what if they weren't shadows at all? What if she was betraying me in the one place that meant the most? I couldn't shake the thought, no matter how hard I tried. That evening, I told her I had to stay late in town again. She didn't protest, didn't ask questions, and that hurt more than anything. Shouldn't a wife care where her husband was going, or when he'd be home? Her indifference was like a knife twisting in my ribs. But this time, I was ready. I parked the truck even farther away, walked back across the fields with the moonlight guiding my steps, and settled myself behind the barn. I crouched low, barely breathing, waiting. Minutes ticked by, slow as molasses. The night was still, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant cry of an owl. And then I heard it, the soft creak of the barn door opening. Lisa slipped inside, carrying the lantern again. The light spilled out, glowing faintly through the cracks in the wood, and my pulse quickened. I crept closer, pressing myself against the cold boards, straining to hear. Through the small window, I saw her moving from stall to stall. She wasn't graceful this time. Her movements were sharp, purposeful. She carried a small jar in her hand, something she scooped into her palm before sprinkling it into the feed troughs. My blood ran cold. This wasn't about another man. This wasn't about whispered secrets or stolen touches. She was feeding them something. Something she didn't want me to know about. I froze, watching as she worked quickly, her face tight, her jaw clenched. The horses shifted uneasily, ears flicking back, hooves stamping the ground. Daisy let out a soft, distressed sound, and Lisa snapped at her. Quiet. The word was harsh, cold, nothing like the gentle tone she used when I was around. My stomach lurched. I wanted to burst in, to grab the jar from her hands and demand answers, but I held myself back. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it. She'd say I was imagining things, twist the truth until I doubted my own eyes. No, I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what she was doing. I backed away from the window, heart hammering, and returned to the house long before she came back. I lay in bed, pretending to be asleep when she slipped under the covers. Her body was warm against mine, but I felt nothing but cold. The next morning, I checked the feed troughs. They smelled strange, faintly bitter, and the horses refused to eat much of it. Daisy nudged me with her nose, eyes wide and anxious, and I felt rage boiling inside me. Lisa came into the barn while I was still there, and for the first time, I looked her straight in the eye and asked, "What were you doing out here last night?" She blinked, feigning confusion. "What do you mean?" "I saw you," I said, my voice low and trembling. "I saw you sprinkling something in their feed." Her expression didn't falter. She just laughed softly, shaking her head. "You must have been dreaming. I was in bed all night. Maybe you're just tired." Gaslighting me. Straight to my face. My fists clenched, but I forced myself to stay calm. Losing my temper wouldn't get me the truth. Instead, I nodded slowly and walked out, but inside I made a silent promise. I'd find out what she was putting in that feed. That day, I called Dr. Hayes, the local vet, and asked him to stop by without telling Lisa. He came in the evening, checked Daisy and a few others, and frowned. "Something's off," he muttered. "They're showing signs of poisoning. Not enough to kill them right away, but enough to weaken them over time." I felt my stomach twist. Poison. That's what Lisa was doing. Not love, not betrayal with another man, but something worse, something I couldn't have imagined in my darkest dreams. She was slowly destroying the very heart of my life. "Do you know what it might be?" I asked, voice tight. Hayes shrugged. "Could be a lot of things. Moldy feed, contaminated supplements, or someone adding something they shouldn't." His eyes met mine then, sharp and questioning. I didn't answer, but he didn't need me to. He knew. After he left, I sat alone in the barn, the lantern casting shadows across the wooden beams. I thought about all the years I had worked, all the sacrifices I had made to build this farm, to care for these horses. And now, the woman I had trusted with my life was trying to take it all away, piece by piece, feeding poison with her own hands. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Lisa breathe softly beside me. Each breath felt like a lie. Each moment we shared a bed felt like a betrayal. The next morning, I resolved to act. I needed proof, undeniable proof, before I confronted her. Proof that she couldn't twist or deny. So I set up a plan. The next time she went into that barn, I would be ready. I would catch her in the act. And when I did, there would be no more lies. I spent the next 2 days pretending everything was normal, wearing a mask so convincing even I almost believed it. Lisa cooked, smiled, chatted about meaningless things, the weather, groceries, a neighbor's new car, as if she weren't hiding something monstrous. But behind her casual words, I saw it now, the flicker of nerves in her eyes whenever I mentioned the horses, the way her smile tightened when I said I'd be home late. I didn't let on. Instead, I set my plan in motion. That morning, before leaving for town, I placed a small camera in the barn. It wasn't fancy, just an old one I used years ago to check on foaling maras, but it would do the job. I hid it high in the rafters, angled toward the feed troughs, and tested the battery twice before leaving. All day, my stomach churned with anticipation and dread. I couldn't focus on work. My hands shook as I loaded supplies, my mind replaying every image of Lisa sprinkling something in the feed. By the time the sun dipped low, I could hardly breathe. When I pulled into the drive that evening, Lisa was in the kitchen, humming as she chopped vegetables. She looked up and smiled sweetly. "You're home early." I forced a smile back. "Figured I'd spend some time with the horses tonight." Her hand froze mid-chop, just for a fraction of a second, before she resumed. Most people wouldn't notice it, but I did. That tiny pause screamed louder than words. "I'll be out there later," she said smoothly. "I wanted to check Daisy's leg." I nodded, my heart hammering. "Later." Good. That night, I pretended to sleep. I lay motionless, my breath steady, until I felt her slip out of bed. The floor creaked softly as she padded across the room, the faint click of the back door breaking the silence. I waited a full 2 minutes before I moved. Then I got up, grabbed my flashlight, and crept toward the barn. The night air was cold, sharp against my skin. The barn loomed ahead, a dim light flickering through the cracks. I pressed myself against the side, listening. Inside, Lisa moved quietly from stall to stall, the lantern in her hand casting long shadows. She held the same jar I'd seen before, sprinkling its contents into the troughs with deliberate care. Daisy shifted uneasily, letting out a low whinny, and Lisa snapped. "Shut up, stupid animal!" Her voice was venom, dripping with hatred. My chest tightened, rage boiling inside me. All those years I'd believed she cared, all those nights I thought we shared this farm together. Lies. Nothing but lies. I stepped inside, the barn door creaking as I pushed it open. Lisa whirled around, her face pale in the lantern light. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. She stammered, clutching the jar tighter. I was just... "Don't lie to me," I snapped, stepping closer. "I saw you. I've seen you every night." "What's in the jar, Lisa?" Her lips trembled, but she didn't answer. Instead, she tried to shove the jar behind her back, as if hiding it would erase the truth. I lunged forward, snatching it from her hands. The lid rattled as I twisted it open, and a sharp, bitter smell hit me instantly. My stomach turned. "Poison," I whispered, horrified. Lisa's eyes darted wildly, her mask of calm shattering. "It's not what you think," she pleaded, reaching for my arm. I just needed them gone. They've taken everything from me, from us. Don't you see? You spend more time with them than with me. You love them more than you love me." Her words sliced through me like a blade. I staggered back, clutching the jar, staring at the woman I thought I knew. "You're killing them," I said, my voice hollow. Slowly, quietly, behind my back. "For what? Because you were jealous?" Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't of guilt, they were of anger. "Yes," she screamed. "I'm sick of living in their shadow. Every cent goes to them, every thought in your head is about them. What about me, huh? What about us? You chose them over me a long time ago. So I chose to take them away." The barn was silent except for the pounding of my heart and the trembling breaths of the horses. Daisy stepped forward, ears pinned, as if she understood every word. I felt something inside me break. The woman I married, the woman I trusted, had been slowly poisoning the only family I had left, the animals I had poured my soul into. I tightened the lid on the jar, my hands trembling. "You're not touching them again," I said firmly, my voice low and final. Lisa's face twisted, her tears turning into fury. "You don't get it. Without them, maybe we could have had a life. Without them, maybe you would have loved me." I stared at her, unable to find words. There was nothing left to say. For a long, tense moment, we stood there, me holding the jar of poison, her glaring at me with all the resentment of years boiling over. Finally, she turned on her heel, storming out of the barn, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The horses stirred nervously, but I stayed with them, my hand resting on Daisy's neck. Her warmth steadied me, kept me from crumbling completely. I knew this wasn't over. Lisa wouldn't stop just because I caught her once. If anything, she'd become more desperate, more dangerous. But I also knew one thing with absolute certainty: the truth was mine now. I had the proof. I had seen it with my own eyes. And I wasn't going to let her destroy my life's work, not ever again. The night I caught Lisa in the barn haunted me for days. The sight of her sprinkling poison into the feed, the venom in her voice when she snapped at Daisy, and the fury in her eyes when I confronted her replayed in my head over and over. I no longer recognized the woman I had married. She pretended nothing had happened. Every morning she made breakfast, every evening she hummed in the kitchen, every smile carefully placed like makeup to cover the truth. But I couldn't be fooled anymore. Every glance at her reminded me that she had been willing to slowly kill the only living beings that had given me purpose. I stayed close to the horses, guarding them. I fed them myself, checked their water, and even slept in the barn with Daisy resting her head on my shoulder. She seemed to know. Her gentle breath steadied me in the long nights, reminding me what I was fighting for. But I couldn't live in constant suspicion. I needed more than the memory of what I'd seen. I needed proof so strong she couldn't twist it. The old camera I had set up gave me exactly that. Grainy though it was, the recording showed Lisa entering the barn, jar in hand, sprinkling poison into the feed. Her cold voice, "Shut up, stupid animal," bled through the speakers. It was all there. Enough to strip away the mask forever. For a while, I carried that footage like a weapon in my pocket. I didn't rush to use it. Instead, I watched Lisa play her game, pretending to be the perfect wife, while inside I waited for the right moment. That moment came one weekend, when her sister invited us to a family gathering. Lisa was almost giddy, fluttering around the house picking out a dress, smiling like nothing was wrong. I said little. I didn't need to. At her sister's home, the whole family gathered in the living room after dinner. Laughter filled the air, children ran through the halls, and Lisa sat beside me, smiling proudly, as though she had everything under control. That was when I asked if we could show a little video I had brought along. Lisa's face faltered for the briefest second. Then she forced a laugh. "Of course," she said. The screen flickered, and the footage began. At first, people leaned forward, puzzled at the shaky barn footage. But then Lisa appeared on screen, lantern in hand, moving stall to stall, sprinkling from her jar. And then her voice. "Shut up, stupid animal!" Gasps filled the room. Her mother's hand shot to her mouth. Her sister whispered, "Lisa, what have you done?" Lisa jumped to her feet, her face burning red. "This is fake. He made this up to frame me." But no one believed her. The evidence was too clear, too damning. Her eyes darted wildly, her words growing shrill. "He's ruining my life. He's lying to all of you." I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap. I didn't have to say a word. The truth spoke for itself. Lisa stormed out, slamming the door so hard the house shook. No one followed her. Everyone's eyes were on me, but I said nothing. What was there to say? They had seen it with their own eyes. That night she didn't come home. For the first time, I felt peace. The following days were strangely calm. Lisa sent angry texts, then pleading ones, then silence. I went to a lawyer, filed for divorce, and handed over the video as evidence. The case was quick. No judge could defend what she had done. When it was finished, I walked back into the barn, Daisy nuzzling me as though she could sense my relief. For the first time in months, I felt like the farm was mine again. Ours again. I rebuilt what she had tried to tear down. Fresh feed, clean water, extra care from the vet. Slowly, the horses grew strong again. Their coats regained their shine, their eyes their brightness. The farm breathed again. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought about Lisa. About how resentment had twisted her into someone capable of cruelty. About whether things could have been different if I had balanced my love for her with my devotion to the horses. But those thoughts always ended the same way, with Daisy nudging my hand, with the herd grazing peacefully, with the quiet truth that Lisa had made her choice. Months later, standing in the barn at sunset, I watched the fields glow gold and the horses graze in the fading light. The world felt steady again. Honest again. I stroked Daisy's neck, whispering softly, "We made it, girl. We're still here." She snorted gently, as if agreeing. And I realized then that revenge didn't always need to be loud. Sometimes, the quiet act of revealing the truth, of letting someone destroy themselves with their own choices, was enough. Lisa was gone. The farm was alive. And I was free.